Hello and welcome to another Bobcast episode 4 of the Nine Penny King Bobcasts. In this one, I managed to talk to Prester / Peter, the Reyne player in the Westerlands, alongside Asmo, the king of automation, who managed to finally give us the feature that we've all been waiting for years now, with a sort of tutorial explanation on how the whole thing works for anyone who's never used it before, and just to help everyone properly format it, your moves, and make it easier for everyone. So this is a bit of a different episode than the last ones, a bit more informative, and I hope that you guys enjoy it and look forward to the next one next week. Welcome to another Bobcast segment here with Prester / Peter. How you doing, man?
I'm alright, thank you. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. How are you enjoying Game Start?
It's been good. I mean, it's the deepest I've been buried in replies since COB, but I'm enjoying it. There's obviously a lot more mod work than there was at the end of ATD, but it's all good fun. I think they've done a really good job with the Game Start events. There's been a lot to actually do.
Got your heads above water then for now?
Yeah, I mean, none of my replies are more than I think a day, 2 days old. I've kept on top of them quite well, I think. But obviously it's just a lot, and it's nice because with any big event, there's lots of people to interact with. So I'm RPing with some people I haven't really played with before, and obviously part of it's just getting a feel for the characters.
Yeah. I mean, is there, would it be possible for you to maybe give a quick rundown on, what claims you've done in the past, your role in the community, just for people who might not know you super well?
Yeah. So okay. So as you said, it's Presta / Peter, right? So when I claimed in COB, I claimed House Presta, and then basically just became synonymous with that claim throughout that game. And since I played in ATD, I played House Kenning, eventually the Lords of Lannisport, and then I've also playing in this game. After COB, I tried to sort of distance myself from being called Presta just because it's confusing. Especially because the Presta claim still exists, but it's not me. So yeah, sort of shifted to being called Peter. But yeah, I've moderated in all of the games I played in, and in COB was also an admin. Obviously, we don't have that split anymore. But I've always been one game per claim. Although this is the first game I've actually been there for the start. I joined not super far into COB, but a bit in. Joined then, and then ATD again. Didn't join at game start. Joined in a bit, obviously in part due to the I suppose the split drama, which I suppose we shouldn't go into really. But yeah, so I think I've been around a fair bit. It's nice to be picking up a big claim. So Presto was sort of middle sized. The Kennings of Lannisport, merchants that became lords. Whereas this is the first proper, significantly powerful, kind of, I guess, well respected, depending on your perspective of the West situation. But yeah.
Well, I mean, you beat out some pretty good candidates too.
Yeah. Except for that, I think there was someone called Bob went for Reyne.
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't sure about his app. No, but I mean, in seriousness, I think we've been really lucky with some of the caliber of LPs and major non-LP claimants. I remember when we were doing the LP apps, we had some really strong applicants. I know there's always the concern because I mean, in every game ever, there's always some LPs which drop out. But I don't think there's any that are going to drop out early. And I think this might be one of, certainly in terms of dedication. I know obviously everyone's going to have their own opinions about direction for claims or how they want certain things to play out. But I definitely think we've got a very dedicated set of LPs. And I think that, we're in a good position for the game. I think every region has something going on. Even the ones that I guess don't have something obvious. Some of them have very clear setup conflicts.
Yeah, there's a foundation that's been set for every place. And so for you being in the West, what have sort of been your plans for, your house as a whole, as well as, maybe how you might want to maneuver things in the region?
Yeah, so I mean, I think the one big thing that I think me and Norlium have laboured plenty, but is like the reactionary in this situation, who's actually changing stuff up, is Tywin, right? Like, as far as the Reynes are concerned, they're not like antagonistic with the Lannisters. Like, there's one Reyne who's on the council with the Lannisters. Roger Reyne, who's the Lord of Castamere, he's on really good terms with Tytos because like everything's going great. They get nice, friendly loans that they don't ever have to pay back. There's a few things. The one of which being Jenna Lannister's betrothal, which is like one of the big flashpoints, like early flashpoints in canon.
Mm-hmm.
Where like the Reynes are all pretty unhappy with that. And I've got something in the pipelines. If someone were to look down my account, there is a thread between a Reyne and Jenna, but I mean we'll have to see where that goes. So I won't divulge too much yet. But I think like the main thing for the Reynes is just to kind of maintain the status quo as much as possible. Until Tywin tries to change stuff, like they're not going to be, they don't want to overthrow the Lannisters. Like that's
not their goal.
The goal is just to continue kind of being effectively like the high towers of the West. Like a lot of the other regions have their kind of like obvious second place houses. Like there's the high towers, there's like Euronwood or Ironwood, depending on how you say it. Like Royce in the Vale. Whereas like the West, it's only really during this period where there's a really clear like secondary power, and arguably to some extent the primary power. Like because whilst legally the Lannisters are in charge, like a lot of people aren't listening to them.
Yeah, the Reynes siphon a lot of money off them, and they're kind of where the power is at the start.
Yeah, and I mean Norlium's, he's doing gold transfers to basically give other houses his starting wealth. So the Lannisters are actually going to be like, I say mechanically handicapped. I mean, they're still a very powerful claim, obviously, but Norlium's I think doing a lot to try and make sure that foundationally is there.
Mm-hmm.
Like I say though, like a lot of what I'm gonna do is gonna depend on what other claimants do, because like I think my main two goals is like one of them is probably to try and not get Castamere, right? Like if that happens, then fair enough, But ideally, any solution which sees me not get mass executed is ideal. But that's going to depend on other people. Like if there's enough support for the Reynes, then they might do stuff, maybe more outrageous than in canon. Whereas if there's, a lot of support for the Lannisters for Tywin to take back control, they're going to have to be a bit more measured. And so I think it's one of those things where like even from game start, so much of what could happen with this is contingent upon like really small details. Like if I happen to have a friend who's in one of the Western House, that might like buy one house's, even if not their support, their willingness to like not help the Lannisters.
Exactly. Remain neutral.
Yeah, it's going to be really like I can't predict exactly what's going to happen, but I think for the moment there's sort of bigger fish to fry. We've just had the assassination attempt. There's going to be presumably some sort of conflict with the Nine Penny Kings. That's dependent on what the Targaryens decide to do. But I think until Tywin starts doing things, the Reynes aren't going to do anything drastic. Although having said that, I think my main plan is just going to be to try and bully Tytos Lannisters as much as possible, like until I can't anymore.
Especially while he's around.
Yeah, like while Tywin's not there, just I think trying to just take advantage, possibly kind of more and more egregiously. Because obviously there's loans, but there's other things. Like one thing I've thought about is trying to get the Reynes to like have the Lannisters revoke certain mechanical privileges on their province. Like try to just, I suppose, interfere mechanically and in character with all the stability that the Lannisters have left. Because ultimately, like, whilst they don't want to take over from the Lannisters, they don't want them to be too strong. And then on the other side of that is just strengthening the Reynes. I mean, I've got, I suppose, one of my two strongest like marriage connections are Lord Roger is married to a Redwine, which kind of like also vaguely links them to the Tyrells. Like Olenna is his like niece, but it's not like an established connection. It's maybe like a way in to the Tyrells, but it's not. There's nothing fixed there. And then also Rhea Reyne is the wife of the heir to Riverrun, which is probably I suppose the most solid alliance. But at the same time, if it comes to war, I doubt the Riverlands are going to want to be, like sending all their troops in. So it's kind of like it's good for prestige, but in terms of potential conflict that might come about, um, I think that's going to depend on how many Western lords I can convince. Because I don't think people outside the region are going to want to get involved, especially because I think there is obviously the funny thing where we know, like, in canon, I've got 2 years left before I'm dead. So, like, I guess there's also that apprehension, like, we all know that Tywin is an extremely deadly, extremely harsh man. So, how much do we want to upset him? I mean, I'm going to go all in, but, we'll see. We'll see what happens, what the fallout is.
And so as I imagine you and Norlium have probably talked quite a bit, is there a hope to sort of keep things within the region rather than like, because that's just the problem with these games sometimes is that, a small conflict can kind of snowball. The hope is kind of to keep things a little bit more contained, I imagine, probably, right?
Yeah, like I said, I don't think we've had this conversation explicitly, but I think we both talked about it in our apps.
Mm-hmm.
That, like, the focus is very much the West, right? Like, I'm unlikely, and even if I wanted to, like I say, I don't think that other regions would want to get involved, but obviously, ideally, we want it to be a West event. So kind of external involvement, I wouldn't think would come at anything above maybe like funding, like potentially might look for like funding for armies or whatever.
Yeah.
But I think the goal will be to try and let the feelings of the Western lords and who they want to support determine what happens. Obviously, there's so many outcomes because it isn't just a case of like Lannisters get overthrown or the Reynes all die, because there's so many factors which, particularly because the Lannisters, like Tywin, such a interesting character, like the direction that Norlium goes, I think has so many options. Like, I don't know what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So I can just react to that. And in the same way, because of the way that I position the Reynes, there's the possibility that they become super antagonistic. But also, Roger Reyne could die in the Stepstones. Like, that's entirely possible. And his heir, shall we say, is a bit less stern, a bit less sort of, it's not lack of ambition, but he's maybe a bit of a nicer person who isn't going to go the extra mile.
Yeah, exactly.
Roger Reyne did kill 7 peaks, including 1 woman. He's not the most forgiving sort of person. And obviously that goes the same for the Lannisters, where, well, if Tywin dies, then Kevin, who's actually a squire to the Reynes, would then be the heir to Castle Rock.
And
yeah.
And so what would you view perhaps as a bit more of a likely outcome? An unlanded/extinct Reyne or Reyne LP?
Oh, which I think is more likely.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd like to say Reyne LP, but I think in reality it's probably like unlanded Reynes. I think it's funny because when we were in the development process, because obviously me and Norlium were both devs, there was a lot of conversations about balancing the Lannisters and the Reynes, right? Because we wanted to make sure the conflict would happen and would be possible, but we didn't want to make it too much of a foregone conclusion in either direction, right? And I was actually in the camp of like, we don't need to buff the Reynes anymore. There'll be plenty of hype around the Reynes. And Norlium was like, no, I think they need to be a bit stronger. And then ironically, we've ended up in claims like opposed to what we were advocating for.
It worked out pretty well.
Yeah, textbook, we're not advocating for our claims. We were both advocating against them in the end. But like, I don't think that the Reynes would have enough support to get rid of the Lannisters. Because even though, like, a lot of people don't like Tytos because he's weak, there's people who don't like him who are going to support probably Tywin because he is going to provide leadership. And obviously the Lannisters have been around for, like, thousands of years, so trying to convince the West at large to get rid of them, I don't think it's going to go down too well if it comes to that. Whereas kind of unlanding the Reynes, like, it's not that hard to do. I mean, we've seen unlandings before. I think, at least in recent games, I've seen far more unlandings than I've seen LP replacement. I know, like, I think 7K and ITP had more sort of, like, leadership changes.
Yeah.
But at least based on kind of recent history, I think I'd be, somewhat burying my head in the sand if I were to say that I think I've got like a better chance of overthrowing Norlium than he's got of killing me. You know.
Well, I mean, I think I would agree with you on your prediction. I do think, like, when I apped Reyne, at least my guess was that they would get unlanded, and I would do whatever I could to prevent them from going extinct. Because to be fair, keeping everyone in the same place when you're in active rebellion is probably not the smartest thing to do.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess that's the one thing that is. I think it's always awkward when we're like creating the game start stuff because we don't want to be like too bogged down in details of what happened in canon, right? So, like for example, if there are X houses that didn't specifically support the Lannisters, then you could say, oh well, they shouldn't be too tied into the Lannisters, or the Reynes, like, well, the Reynes canonically all got killed at Castamere, so they should all be in Castamere. But obviously, like, you want to create something that feels more real, because this period of canon is kind of only referenced by the characters kind of, I suppose, offhandedly to some extent.
Mm-hmm.
So like my heir lives in King's Landing, and he works for the Master of Laws. So like even if Castamere gets drowned or we get destroyed and everyone there dies, like I suppose succession is a little bit more safe. However, being unlanded is, I think, on the cards if it goes along the lines of canon. Because obviously all they need to do is take the castle, which isn't necessarily as hard as like wiping everyone out.
And so I know that obviously in canon, Tarbeck is one of the Reyne's primary allies, but I also know that you have an announcement of sorts for Tarbeck's / a couple other claims.
Yeah, so basically, like we put up announcements a few days ago. We've been talking about it. We've been talking to LPs trying to get them to like remind claimants. But there's a few claimants who haven't done their almanacs. So basically, we've said like, and it should be out by the time this goes out, that basically players who haven't done their almanacs will be able to have their claims like claimed by someone else if someone else puts a claim post up. So Tarbeck is one of those. I have talked to the Tarbeck player a few times, but like hasn't done that setup. So kind of it's somewhat in the air what happens with Tarbeck, because I haven't been able to iron anything out in detail. But in terms of like allies, in the West, I think I've got my lord's aunt is the Lady of the Golden Tooth. I know it was talked about by a lot of people who apt Lefford. Lefford, ironically, was one of the most apt claims, but it was mostly second and third choices.
Mm-hmm.
It was my second choice, as it happens. But because the Leffords are sort of positioned as almost like a kingmaker claim, because the Reynes and Lannisters are both very strong, and a lot of their allies are kind of fixed. But the Leffords are the most powerful Western house that don't have like a fixed affiliation. So like potentially I might be able to get them on side if the Lannisters try and do anything drastic, but I can't be sure. The Lord Lefford is in his 50s. We don't know how long he's going to be around for. So like it could all change.
As these games go, it depends what character likes you.
Well, yeah, and I mean, like I've got one or two. I've got a marriage to a Lydon and a marriage to an Estrin. And the Estrins are interesting because they're a vassal of the Marbrands, who are like big Lannister loyalists. So like potentially, if I can get them on side, that sort of hacks away at the I guess support base that the Marbrands have. But like I guess the most intimidating thing for me is the Reyne claimant is like if you go to like the King's Landing tab on the character almanac, like all the Western people who are at court, who are like part of the like Aerys, Stefan, Tywin kind of like posse. There's a lot of people there and a lot of quite important people. So, it's that there's definitely a potential that I won't be able to muster any support. But we'll kind of have to see, because I think it's an interesting balance between what a lord wants out of the situation, because obviously in terms of wealth, it's very profitable for everyone to take advantage of the Lannisters, but it doesn't do much for like the pride of the Westerlands. Like it looks quite bad. I had a conversation recently in character about like banditry. I know like Norlian has made some references to there being more banditry in the Westerlands. It's not a good look, but it is profitable. So kind of people are going to have to determine, kind of what matters more for their characters.
Well, thank you for the breakdown. I mean, especially for the West players, they've now had the Lannister player and you have
Yeah,
some stuff to say, which I think there'll be a lot for people to chew on.
and I
Before,
think I would just say like the nice thing I think is like me and Nolan were on very good terms out of character. Like we've had a lot of conversations about like Reyne Lannister history and like lots of other elements of the backstory. And so I think what's nice is I know there's a tendency for these sorts of like tense situations to get quite out of hand out of character. But I think the nice thing should be like even if all my characters get murdered by Tywin, like it should still probably happen with a smile because we're kind of all on board and on the same page, which I think is nice.
well, I like the message, and if you before we wrap up, as we head on the out of this interview, do you have a prediction for first major canon death, perhaps in the Stepstones, maybe afterwards? Any picks at all? Any outlandish picks, or it's all up to
So
you?
it's a hard one. So like I mean the one that I kind of want to happen from like an in character perspective is obviously Tywin, right? Because like he's the most he's the one I think that would alter the most for me as a claim, right? It would change the path of things. But I think realistically, he'll probably have a reasonable amount of people like defending him, a reasonable amount of bodyguards. Um, but I'm thinking maybe Ares. Like I think there'll still be people standing up to support him, but he's not the most mentally stable. I can see him maybe going off and doing some risky things. Whereas I think like Tywin's kind of got his head screwed on. Might be a bit more cautious about things. So I can see Aerys sort of like rushing into some sort of duel with maybe even Meleys, one of the Nine Penny Kings. That might not end well. But yeah, so I think I'll go with Aerys. Sorry, Ingan.
Yeah, especially if they're split up, maybe Tywin can't be like, "No, Ares, don't do this."
Yeah, I mean, obviously that's the thing. He's sort of a calming influence on Aerys, but like, yeah, if they're not together, then things might end a bit differently.
Well, thank you so much for taking the time to sit down, Peter. Appreciate you being able to talk out your claim and help hype up the West. Before we finish up, is there anything that you want to maybe tell people, either as a Rain player or as a mod? Just anything
Oh,
at all. The floor is yours.
that's a good question. I would just say, like, first of all, like, thank you for having me on. Like, I've always wanted to be on Bobcast, so
Yeah, no
it's a
problem.
bit. But also, like Box invited me, so Bok, I'm playing both sides. I promise.
Oh, it's okay.
Uh,
No worries.
yeah. But like, I think in terms of as a Rain player, I think the main thing is like, if anyone wants to get involved as a dynamic claim or as an SCC or anything, like, feel free to message me and talk out ideas. Like, the Rains are lucky in terms of like the way we did the map that they have a number of cool cannon houses, like Westerling, Brack, Sarsfield are all under the Rains.
Hmm.
So like, I'm a bit sad no one claimed them. So if someone wants to claim them, then please message me. I will give you lots of provinces, I promise. And as a mod, I think I'd just like to say like thank you for everyone in the community. Also as a dev, right? Like it feels very surreal to me that what was just like a group DM between like 2 and then 4 people, like months ago,
Hmm.
has turned into an actual game where people are invested in it. They're playing the game. They're enjoying it. Um, the mechs are not perfect. I'm sure there'll be patches along the way, but like, thank you to everyone in the community for like the support and for just being part of the community because I think it means a lot to a lot of people. So it's really nice.
Well, thank you so much, Peter, and I look forward to seeing how the rain conflict, or perhaps lack of conflict, turns out.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks very much, Bob. And I believe I've just offered to try and help your character from bleeding out in character. So yeah,
Thank you.
we'll see how that goes.
See ya.
All right, take care, Bob.
Okay, so I am here with Asmo, the king of automation. Asmo, how are you doing?
I'm doing all right. And yourself, Bob?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty good. How have you been enjoying the game start?
Oh yeah, the game start's been pretty intense and pretty fun. I'm glad to finally have things rolling.
Yeah, after all this time, it's nice to finally be writing. So just to sort of introduce you, I don't know if you wanted to perhaps go over, just your past claims and your history with these games. Just maybe a little bit of an introduction for anybody who doesn't know you.
Yeah, I've been bouncing in and out of these games since 2016 or so. Uh, sort of in and out a fair bit. most frequently I end up sniping Manderley at some point through each game. That's kind of like the thing I've done for the past few games. I have sworn off claiming Manderley this game, but we'll see how that ends up. You know, it may be worth losing a bet or two.
Do you have bets going on for that?
Yes.
Well, I mean, I've always liked when you played Manderley, so but I mean, I don't know. Now you're playing Karen, so maybe change of scenery
Yeah, I'm
might
really
be
hyped
nice.
to do a completely different claim this game. So I usually play in either the Vale or the North, and so we went for something completely different this time, and not a city claim either. Something fairly rugged and depopulated.
A little bit more redneck compared to Manderley.
Yes, exactly.
So Asmo, I know that you really wanted to cover automation, which is what you sort of spearheaded, and a lot of people might not be super familiar with. So the floor is yours, and I'll let you go over anything that you want to for automation.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm delighted to be able to talk about automation and to show off a little bit. So one of the strongest mechanical hurdles that people have playing the mechanical side of these games is counting up provinces, drawing maps, finding routes around the map between two places, seeing how long that it'll take, and what tiles they go through and all of that, and what time they arrive at places. So since we switched from the hex map to the province map, now we can properly document all these little tile connections, and we can feed that into a fancy algorithm called Dijkstra's algorithm. I think that's Dutch. I don't know. It sounds Dutch. And so using that, we can calculate the best path between two locations based on how expensive it is to move between any two tiles. And so that's sort of the nuts and bolts side of it. What does it look like for you if you're trying to calculate a route between two places? So we'll do just the basic one first. So I've designed this as a basic input-output. This link is linked on the sidebar, and I believe it's also pinned, and I believe it may also have a carlbot command attached to it. This is being complaining. If it does this Nix environment thing, you sometimes have to reload the page. But this is the easy. This replit is just the easiest way I can host things for free.
Mm-hmm.
Please load. This would be very awkward if it didn't load. Let's do naval front end. Let's do naval front end. So this is the same but for naval movement. So if you want to go between two ports or any two water tiles, this calculates the best path between these two. And so in past games, there were these very extensive and frankly quite impressive movement calculators based on certain ports. But this method is a little bit simpler. So movement speed of the party or the lore cog. Obviously, this depends on your ship. I really hope more people take the move speed buff to ships. I think it's very underrated. But we'll do a lore cog. And so now you enter the starting province. This is the potential trip up point for a lot of people, is you have to enter the title of places without apostrophes and without spaces. And this is just because the code is all written in Python, and so including spaces and apostrophes where you maybe don't want things split up can cause problems. So this is the example. It has both a space and an apostrophe. Shout out to my Vance bros. So for example, King's Landing. So no apostrophe, no space, and you have to keep the capitalization correct also because it's done by string matching. So it has to be, like as with most things in code, it has to be exactly accurate. So we'll start at King's Landing. Where should we sail to, Bob?
Let's sail to Old Town.
Old Town. Good choice. We're using open water?
No. Because we don't want to die.
All right, now this optimal route, this lets us choose to avoid certain tiles. Are there any water tiles that we explicitly want to not go through?
Maybe the stepstones, but I don't know if we'd have to.
I think if we don't go through the stepstones, we can't make it.
Oh yeah. Okay, no, never mind then. I think
so
it's
yeah, usually
route.
this will be no, but we'll this gives you the chance if you're doing some complex naval movements to say, oh, I don't want to go anywhere near King's Landing, or oh, I think my opponents might be patrolling this tile, let's not go there. and then, oh, whoops, okay. Let's see. So I wrote no, but then I just didn't enter, just so I can show what this looks like. So you enter the provinces to avoid as a comma-separated list if you want to avoid any provinces. And now you enter the starting time for when you want to depart. And so this can help you calculate your exact arrival time at places, so you don't even have to do addition. No counting, no addition. No division, no math, no nothing. That's the goal. And then, of course, you can enter now if you wish. And there we go. So it'll take you a total of 108 hours to travel from King's Landing to Old Town by Lorcog with this end time in UTC. All times are given in UTC. If you have Reddit open, you can mouse over the time next to the Reddit comment. So, like, for example, if you mouse over this coronation event, it'll tell you Monday, June 26th, 025306, and you can just type that exactly into starting time. So everything is done in UTC, and then it gives you this list of all the provinces you'll travel through.
And this is the same idea for the regular
Yes,
movement calculator.
And I'm going to show you
as well.
the regular one as well now that it seems to have loaded. Land movement calculator. I think 10 is standard. I don't remember. It got changed a bunch. Starting province, we'll do Winterfell. Where are we ending, Bob? Where are we dropping?
Sunspear.
Sunspear. Make sure we type it in correctly. Is optimal route? Yes. Now. 417 hours. That's a long time. You'll notice that Sunspear has no road going to it. That's why it takes forever. But these are all the provinces we go through. All right, so this is all great for the players to know when they'll get somewhere, but what about all these provinces we're passing through? Surely some of them will try and stop us. When are we going to get stopped? Who are we going to get stopped by? Patrols testing. This one is mod only, naturally.
So just to give people an idea of how it works.
Yeah, so this is if you ever want to mod and you're thinking, oh, I want to mod, but all that calculating and counting, I can't handle it, and it does get draining. Even as someone that's done like a lot of math in his life, it does get very draining. So it's not just if you're dumb like me, but so let's go through and see what this looks like from the mod side. So because of the way detections work, you now have to for the mod side, the patrol testing, you have to enter the size of the party. We'll do 20 since that's a standard traveling party.
And so that includes PCs and like foot soldiers and everything. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so these two are the relevant inputs for the detections chart. So if we go through, I have no clue how to do this. No. 9 penny kings. This one. If we go to the rules, we go to land combat, and there should be something on detections here. Why is this not linked as old Reddit? Let's see. So we've got detections somewhere, movement, do detections, patrols, passes, and unmarked troops. So this table and all of this, like who gets detected when by what, is all coded in, as long as you know these two parameters. So you don't even have to look at the rules.
Even better.
Exactly. So now we'll do the same route. So Winterfell, Sunspear. Sure. Now. So in addition to everything that the plebes get, the mod version also tells you when you hit a given patrol, where you hit the given patrol. So this would be on the border between LHT and RL30. LHT is the only instance where you do not type the normal province name because I'm too lazy to type out Lord Haraway's town.
Fair enough.
And then this little comment tells you what happened there. LHT Eastern Bridge controlled by Derry and the user. So if you're a lazy mod, you can literally copy paste this into a comment, and it will ping the appropriate person.
Damn.
So all you have to do if you're a mod and you want to calculate the patrols someone is going to trip is run through this, and then copy each of these outputs into a separate comment, and you're done with the patrols.
And now for somebody who's doing like a regular movement, would it be best for them then to just essentially copy and then paste, the info that they get on the movement calculator and just include that as a movement order?
Yeah, so you can include, I think that you can include just this as your movement order. If you want to go even sparser, you can just include the information up from here. So how fast, how many are you hostile, start, end. And that's really all you need.
Because then that's all the mods need to input it into the patrol calculator.
Exactly. And then either you or the mods can figure out when you get there. It's the same, obviously, if you start at the same time. So let's do an example where there's a larger and more hostile army to show what happens if you trip more patrols. That'll do 10. Now let's enter a party size of 100. And yes, they're hostile. So we're just going to round up a bunch of angry Northmen and have them barrel down the King's Road, burning and pillaging everything in their path. Now, because they are hostile and a bigger party, in addition to these patrols, they also get detected by holdfasts, and it'll tell you who owns the holdfast as well. So these are all the holdfasts that get tripped. This is why trying to bulldoze your way from Winterfell to Sunspear is kind of a bad idea.
The famous northern invasion of Sunspear is not a good plan.
I'm not saying it's not a good plan. I'd love to watch it.
Maybe we gotta have the wildlings come down. They didn't
Exactly.
go down far enough. Well, Asmo, I mean, this is very comprehensive and very easy. Would you be able maybe to just quickly show where people can find it on the subreddit?
Oh yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Let's do. So under game resources, you've got the land movement calculator and the naval movement calculator. So game resources, land movement opens here, and then you just hit the play button. You wait for it to load.
And that's it.
Yep. And because this is cached from the other window we have open, normally you wouldn't see anyone else's move orders. It's just because this is cached. Like if I open this in an entirely new window, it wouldn't show that.
So nobody's gonna be able to see their secret movements.
Exactly. And as many people as want can okay, maybe it did show. Huh. Maybe it's cached on my computer. Anyway, as many people as want can calculate move orders at the same time too. There's no rate limiting there.
Well, awesome. Well, thank you so much, like I said, Asmo, for sitting down and walking through this.
I want to note one more thing.
Sure.
Steven did a lot of the back end for this, so I'll briefly show what the back end looks like.
To give it a sense of scale.
Log in.
Or I can block this part out, no worries.
It's just me. How do I log in? Log in. There we go. Alright, now we can show the code. So I show you what the code looks like if it loads. There we go. So this is what the backend looks like. This is the Dijkstra method. Full disclosure, I copied this off of the internet. And then we've got sort of front end input output here, and then the real nuts and bolts of this is this node map. It documents every adjacent province and how much it costs to go there. So this is the naval version. So for example, going from the water adjacent to Flint's Finger into Flint's Finger costs 0 because it's just moving into a port, but moving out into the water costs 1. And so this is really long and had to be coded by hand.
Wow.
I did not do all of this. I did maybe less than half of this. I want to give a super special shout out to Steven or Stefanos, who did most of the inputting of this. Although I did split it up between. I basically split this up between a lot of people to try and share the load, as Samwise Gamgee would say. Let's see if I can go to the land version. This one. Log in. There we go. And then this one. So this is what this is the original one that was just the Stormlands. And then, so this is what the node map looks like for all of these provinces.
Damn.
And it's really long. It's if it lets me scroll to the bottom, it's thousands of it's 2,000 lines long.
Well, it's a lot.
This is where, and so if you'll notice, the versioning is all Greek city-states, and that's a thank you to Stephanos for doing a lot of this work. So that's where a lot of the work went in, was just coding this in. It's kind of, if you love data entry, boy, have I got a job for you. And then the coding is not super complicated. It's basically just some if loops. So that's what it looks like on the code layer with this node map. And this is where I think a lot of past attempts at automation have run into trouble, is they tried to automate making this node map, whereas Stephanos, myself, and a few others kind of just brute forced it by typing out all of these.
Mm-hmm.
And this is why using a province map is so much more important than using the hex map, because trying to do this on a hex map would take literal years, as opposed to the province map, where there's at least a finite number of provinces. I believe there is 570 or so provinces, something like that. And then another 200 or so, more than 200, maybe another 300 or so water provinces. So yeah, that's where a lot of the legwork of building this came in, was just coding in the node map.
Well, Asmo, like I said, thank you so much for sitting down and going through this for everyone. Is there anything that you sort of want to say before wrapping up, or anything like that? Just that you want to let people know?
Yeah, if you encounter any bugs, add me as a friend on Discord and send me screenshots of any bugs you find. We have done a fair bit of testing on it to try and catch things, but it's likely not perfect, given that, once you've entered 1,000 of these, you might start to make mistakes. So if it's very likely, I would say almost certain, that there's still some errors left in the node map especially. And so if you run into any problems, please DM me, or you can send it to Steven, and he'll send it on to me as well. So if you have any questions or errors that you find, possible further expansion on this, I don't want to set any pressure or time limit or anything like that on this, but Mia, I believe, is working on turning this long string of characters into an Imgur uploaded map, so that the map drawing is also automated. I don't know any kind of time frame on that, and I don't want to put any pressure on Mia, but it's an interesting thing. That's kind of what the next step would look like. The other option is, if the other way to expand is if people are finding that they have a lot of problems remembering to do the capitals right and the spacing right, I may try to code it such that it's more resilient to having typing errors. So you can have different capitalizations and stuff like that. I think Illyrian was kind of helping me with that. So shout out to him. So yeah, there's a few different ways we could still go, but certainly this is functional, and I hope a really helpful resource for both the players and the mods to use. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Asmo, and I think we're forever in your debt for this. It's been a long time coming.
Yeah, thanks so much.